Collective Cast number 6, Hitting Walls.
You're tuned to the Collective Cast. Agents of the Collective strive to fight, adapt, and grow. Whether facing the evils of the world or those within ourselves, we support one another and leave nobody behind. And now, here's your host of the Collective Cast, the Cryptic Chameleon.
Hello everybody, this is Chris, also known as the Cryptic Chameleon. I want to thank you fellow agents and members of the Collective for joining me here as we continue our journey to fight, adapt, and grow, both in everyday life and if you're part of my gaming stuff and gaming as well. But the podcast mostly focuses on everyday life, and this episode's going to be a little bit different. We can consider this episode kind of a check-in episode. So I didn't make last week's episode, and there's a variety of reasons for that, including things that are going on in my life that are difficult to deal with. But I'm also finding that the process of internal change takes up a lot of energy, and that when you don't have as many things going on in life, you have more energy to focus on that. And then what happens is you get back into work, or at least what happened to me was I got back into work. I got, I started working again, and for the first week, things were going okay. I was really staying on top of, making a plan for my week, like the 7 Habits book said I should be doing. I was, generally staying on top of my exercise and everything else. Things were going well. And then last week came. And last week was the first week back from work. Well, anyway, that's not the point. Or back to work. The point is, last week got nuts. So I went back to work on the 4th, and I started doing my job, which includes 4 hours of training, live training basically, during the day, and then an hour of training for a different region of the world at night, which, as you can imagine, is very taxing on your internal energy stores. When I'm training, I tend to speak louder, I tend to be more expressive, I tend to, use my hands to gesture a lot more. So even though I'm not functionally doing more than 8 hours of work in a day, I'm still doing a lot more talking, and I'm still being more expressive, which takes up more energy. On top of that, last week, maybe I should do a proper coverage of this. So for those of you that are listening that don't know or that aren't part of my community online, I am in the process of going through a divorce. It's, not a great situation, obviously. I mean, divorce never is. Now, for the person who is my spouse currently, she and I actually have a better friendship than we've ever had at this point. But that's because we never had a real friendship to begin with. And, my own internal character defects that I've been talking about are part of the reason for that. Growing up, I was very insecure. I am a person who didn't have an easy time trusting people, not even trusting people in my own family. I didn't even feel like I belonged in my own family, even though they showed me love. They showed me love in whatever way they could, in whatever way they knew how to. That doesn't mean that I felt that way. Now, part of that's me internally, but part of that might be other things as well that I'm diving into. So part of the reason why I started going through 7 Habits is because, guess what? I have a therapist, and I'm starting to go through it. And part of the reason I want to share that with other people is because, one, the book recommended it, as I pointed out. But 2, I've always loved doing audio and visual things. I like podcasting. I like game streaming. I like doing things where I'm behind a microphone, not necessarily because I'm the center of attention, but because I do somewhat enjoy the process. And yes, I do somewhat enjoy the sound of my own voice. So this podcast is not just out there for me to share the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People with you, or to share other resources with you, but it's also a very real aspect of my journey in life, and sharing the pain and suffering that I'm going through even if it's just almost like as an audio journal for myself, but hey, you're listening too, right? I mean, if you are listening, you're listening. And that's a comfort because guess what? Other people go through this. Other people go through the hard times of trying to go through personal growth and change and hitting a wall, which is what I'm going through right now. I've hit a wall. And the wall is, well, the difference between energy reserves, first of all, time, because last week, as I was introducing, I am going through a divorce. We are going through the divorce very, kindly towards each other. We're not getting lawyers involved and all that other stuff. And you can go ahead and say, oh my gosh, you're not getting lawyers involved. What's wrong with you? Don't worry about it. The point is that last week, Monday and Tuesday night, I had to go through for my state, mandated parenting education classes, which were 3 hours each. So that took my Monday and Tuesday nights out of the picture completely, because from 6 to 9 p.m., I was doing that. And on top of that, my current spouse and I do spend time talking together at night. We're still living in the same place. We don't hate each other. We're not screaming and like making all sorts of threats and whatnot. We actually have really deep conversations, or at least deeper than I'm used to. And no, she's at a point where she doesn't have a deep level of trust for me. And no, I'm not upset about that because I understand where she's coming from, because I have been basically a selfish, entitled man-child for the majority of my life. And it took a lot to realize that. And yeah, there are other aspects of that I am not going to talk about because guess what? I don't have to share everything with everybody. That's not the way it works. I can share a good chunk of my life with you, but I can't share everything. And I don't think that you would want me to share everything either, because that would make you uncomfortable. If I started telling you all the deepest, darkest things of life, all the deepest, darkest stories of life and whatnot, you'd be like, this guy's oversharing. He's just trying to get attention. I'm not trying to get attention here. The point that I'm trying to make is that last week I was unable, I did my planning for last week. I thought I was on good track, but then I started falling behind on things. I didn't get a bunch of social media posts pre-posted like I wanted to, which I try to do. I'm trying to boost my social presence online for the things I care about, such as the game stream and this podcast. I'm trying to pre-post things that might draw interest so that, I have a group of people that are supporting me in what I'm doing. It feels good to be supported in what you're doing, even if it's just by people watching or listening, It makes you feel like you belong to something. And yes, that's part of my problem is that, I haven't really felt secure in just belonging in of myself and feeling like I could belong anywhere. But I don't do any of these things to become popular. I wouldn't stream 2 hours on Saturday and Sundays and put out a bunch of YouTube videos and currently only have 18 followers if I was doing it for the likes and for the follows. I wouldn't, I would be extremely frustrated if I was doing streaming and, had 1 to 2 solid viewers most of the time, and I was thinking I should have hundreds or thousands. I do it because I enjoy it. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to, as part of who I'm trying to become and learning who it is that I am and trying to be more of that person, that I don't want to invest the time to do more social outreach and things like that. So that was in some of my weekly planning, and it didn't happen. This week, my weekly planning hasn't happened, and last week, this podcast didn't happen for reasons you can definitely imagine at this point. And, to be honest, I did read the next chapter in the 7 Habits book, and I can't remember what it is that I read, and it doesn't mean it's not meaningful. It just means that I haven't had the mental energy or capacity to go through it. And that's not your fault. And it's not really my fault either. We can only deal with what we can deal with. My issue is the guilt that I feel around that sometimes. I really felt strongly like I want to get this podcast out, and this is part of something I'm doing for myself, and I need to do it. And then I couldn't do it, and it hurt. And that's the problem, or part of the problem in this journey of self-growth, is that we set goals, or I set goals, I set milestones, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going strong. I can keep this up. I can keep this up. And then something changes and I can't keep it up. And it is so hard to accept that, because being compassionate towards others, first of all, is a skill that I'm still learning. But secondly, being compassionate towards myself, oh, well, that's a whole nother ball of wax. You know, oh my gosh, self, how could you miss these goals? How could you, not want to, do these things that you love? And it's not that I don't want to do them. I just didn't have the throughput to be able to do it. And that's hard. And even tonight, as I'm recording this, I know for a fact that I'm not going to have the transcripts ready, because I'm not going to have the YouTube version ready, because I just don't have the time. But I wanted to get something out. I care about still doing this. I care for me because it's a log of what I'm going through, but I care for others because if you're hearing what I'm going through, chances are that you or somebody else that you know has gone through it. And maybe you can take comfort in that. None of life is easy for anybody. And if anybody tells you life is easy, they don't know what they're talking about. I always thought life was easy for me because I buried myself away from feeling the pain or the loneliness or any other negative feelings. I didn't want to feel them, so I ran from them. And the ways that I ran from them were unhealthy. It wasn't alcohol or drugs, luckily, but we all have our own drugs, and we all have ways that we might treat others that act as a way of us dealing with coping with our own inability to deal with the pain that we experience in life. At least that was the case for me. I was an angry person, maybe not physically violently angry, but angry. And I was easily annoyed. I still get easily annoyed at times. I've gotten better, but that doesn't mean that I'm great. It's a process. And as I'm saying this out loud to you, whoever you are that might be listening, I'm saying it to myself. I don't say this from a place of strength. I don't say this from a place where, I'm an expert. I have to learn this lesson over and over again. I think I'm doing great. I think I'm, on the right track. I'm hitting these different goals, and yet then I find myself, further from the goals than I thought I might be. And it's hard. And it's hard to live in this moment and to feel this emotion. But I have to. And we all have to. Because if we run from it, if we run from the pain, if we try to douse the pain in YouTube videos, food, we try to douse the pain in whatever way that we want to douse the pain, yeah, it feels like the pain goes away, but it doesn't. I have to accept the fact that, yeah, I missed some goals that I set for myself. And that's okay. That's the thing that I have to work on, is being okay with it. Because it's going to happen. Life isn't perfect. Life is not especially in terms of character development, in terms of correcting deep-seated things that a person has dealt with for a good chunk of their life. It doesn't happen at the pace that we want it to. It doesn't happen at the pace I want it to. I would love to snap my fingers and have it be done. And I will always say this: if you could give me a pill that would make my problems go away, I would take it in a heartbeat, because I'm impatient. And that's one of the things I need to work on. I also put higher standards on myself sometimes than I should, but I also put lower standards on myself than I should in other areas of my life. And those are hard things. And you might be listening to this and saying, wow, this guy is really getting down on himself, and this is really a stream of consciousness. And you're right. Right now, this is a stream of consciousness, because I wanted to get out here and talk about what's going on. I can't fake it. I'm not going to sit there and be like, hey, yeah, I'm your guru of the 7, habits of highly effective people. Let me pretend that I know everything. Let me pretend that my life is perfect. And you know what? I pretended my life was perfect, or my life was what I imagined it to be for a good chunk of my life. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not going to do that to myself. It's hard. And it's hard because self-improvement is a continuous journey. And even when you get to one ledge on the mountain of change as you're going up it, there's going to always be another one. It's an endless climb until, well, eventually you die, you know? It's an endless climb to deal with childhood things that you've never dealt with. It's an endless climb to deal with attitudes in yourself that aren't healthy towards yourself or others. It's an endless climb to get through even like little niggly behaviors that are so small that, you know, only you notice that they frustrate you when you do them. Or only people within your closest inner circle around you understand that it's frustrating when you do them. Relationships with others and correcting internal attitudes that you might have towards others that prevent you from having the relationships you should have. Those are difficult to deal with too. So there's a lot of work to do for all of us, myself included, especially myself. So I never speak to you as an expert. And I apologize for not getting a podcast out last week. And I do feel bad about it. I do. But at the same time, I also need to be compassionate towards myself and need to see that life happens. So are you going to get one of these endless rants every time I miss a podcast? No, that's not going to happen. You're not going to get an endless rant every time I miss a podcast. And in fact, I think it's better to set better expectations around the frequency of these podcasts. So, for example, I may only be able to guarantee a podcast every other week. That doesn't mean that I won't try for every week. I really do want to do something weekly. It's great to do something weekly. I just don't know that where my life is right now, I can guarantee that to all of you. And again, if all of you is just me, hey, I can't guarantee that to myself, that I can do a podcast every week, that I could do what needs to happen with it every week. I can't guarantee that I'm always going to be the most in touch person when it comes to everything that I'm doing on Twitter and on my different Discord communities, you know? I think my bandwidth is my own Discord community and one other one that I'm part of right now. And that's about it. And even then, it's a couple times a day jumping in, saying hi, those types of things. In terms of Twitter, my goal is to, you know, post a bunch of tweets at the beginning of the week and then occasionally jump on and react to people as they're saying stuff that I'm interested in or when I care about something they're going through. One other person that's been very good about sharing their journey online in terms of difficulties they've had in life is someone known as the Demented Raven. And she can be found on Twitch, but she has two different Twitter accounts. One that is her kind of Twitch-facing account. It's her you know, gaming persona, but she has one that she just created to talk about mental health things that she's struggling with and to put them out there. And it was in part because she wanted to separate out the issues that she was struggling with depression, anxiety, whatever it might be, from the quote-unquote fun of her game streaming world. And so that's something that, you know, is really something that I applaud her for because of the strength that she showed in doing that. So I think the point is to be real. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be real. I'm going to be real to myself, and I'm going to be real to you. Just like the Demented Raven is being real to her audience. And so, you know, I appreciate you growing with me and fighting, adapting, and growing with me. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate all the effort that you put into being part of the community and to encouraging one another. It's still my goal to, whenever we can, to try to set up something for the end of each month so that we could share in each other's journey together as part of the podcast if you're part of the Discord community, so that I can pull you into a chat room and we can all sit here and talk about life for a half hour or so and be able to, you know, help each other along in our journeys. And so that's something that I still feel strongly about and want to do. I have to put it on the calendar still for this month, and I will be doing that. So please join the Discord. So thank you for listening to this rant. If you found any value in it whatsoever, please, by all means, I believe in the value for value model. So if you like what you're hearing here, or if it resonates with you, by all means, share it with somebody. join the Discord that is always in the show note links. And, if you want to toss me a couple bucks on PayPal, I appreciate it because it, as I mentioned, does take time and energy and effort to put all this together. But that being said, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening. And if you could share this with someone else that you think might enjoy it or might take something away from it, that's great. And I'm excited about that. So next time, hopefully we'll pick up on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm in the transitional chapter between the, the personal victory and the public victory. So I'm going to reread the chapter and take some notes, and we will hopefully be back on track in a week or 2 here. Again, guaranteeing new shows every other week, but hopefully trying for every week. In the meantime, I want to thank you for being part of the collective and joining with me in our journey together to fight, adapt, and grow. We'll see you next time. Take care.